In a tit-for-tat move, China has ordered the closure of the U.S. consulate in Chengdu. The move comes 3 days after the United States of America ordered China to shut down its consulate in Houston, Texas. The Consulate General of the United States in Chengdu was one of the 7 American diplomatic missions in China. It was established in the year 1985. The consular district, among other places, included Tibet, making it strategically important. The Chinese Foreign Ministry made it clear that it was a retaliatory move against the closure of its own Houston consulate. It said that the measure taken by China is a legitimate and necessary response to the unspecified act by America. Beijing also said that it is not violating any international law.
On July the 24th, today, the MFA informed the U.S. Embassy in China of its decision to withdraw its consent for the establishment and operation of the U.S. Consulate General in Chengdu, and also made specific requirements on the ceasing of operations and events by the Consulate General. On July the 21st, the U.S. launched a unilateral provocation by abruptly demanding that China close its Consulate General in Houston. The U.S. move seriously breached international law, basic norms of international relations, and terms of China-U.S. Consular Convention. It gravely harmed China-U.S. relations. China's measure is a legitimate and necessary response to the unjustified act of the U.S. It conforms with international law, basic norms of international relations, and customary diplomatic practices. The current situation in bilateral relations is not what China desires to see, and the U.S. is responsible for all this. Once again, we urge the U.S. to immediately retract its wrong decision and create necessary conditions for bringing bilateral relations back on track. Some of the personnel in the U.S. Consulate General in Chengdu engaged in activities inconsistent with their capacity. They interfered in China's internal affairs and harmed China's national security interests. We lodged multiple representations. The U.S. knows this crystal clear.
Tensions escalated between Washington and Beijing after the U.S. asked China to shut down its consulate in Houston within 72 hours. U.S. said the consulate was helping Chinese nationals steal American intellectual property. Earlier, Richard Kimber had joined us from Hong Kong. Listen.
So this Chengdu consulate is an interesting development for the China's retaliation because it's specifically a key listening post for US efforts to try and understand what's happening in the western region of Tibet. Now, Tibet has long been a sore point between the East and the West in terms of superpower diplomacy because China has long sought to try and suppress dissent towards the Chinese government coming from the region of Tibet. So it's been a very important place for the US to have ears and eyes to understand what's happening there. So to close down the Chengdu consulate has added significance. It's not just a random move by China, a very deliberate move to try and close down a consulate that the US has long been using to try and understand how dissent is forming towards the Chinese government. So that's the reason that Chengdu has been targeted in this way. Well, that's right. Mike Pompeo pulling no punches. He's been describing the reason that they had to shut down the consulate in Houston as being nothing other than massive theft of intellectual property. And in a speech yesterday, he really made it clear that he has no intention under his watch of allowing the Chinese Communist Party to develop further in the way that he says it is. There's no question that there's going to be further action from the US if his words stand up with the actions that he and the Trump administration are planning to take. The real question is how, if at all, any diplomatic relations can continue if instead of any conversation taking between the two superpowers, instead there is just this continued tit-for-tat retaliatory action. China is trying to play what it likes to think of as being the straight card in this relationship by saying that it's only responding to US actions, it's not provoking US actions, and that's a key line that the Chinese Foreign Ministry has been pushing in recent weeks as this relationship has worsened. But in the international world there's clearly still a lot of pressure on China, particularly through what's happening here in Hong Kong because of the pressure on the Chinese government over the national security law. So really, until there's a return to dialogue, the like of which we became used to during the trade talks between the US and China, it seems unlikely that this kind of tension will actually simmer down.